Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. I had fallen to my knees on the floor, weeping, my hands clasped together. Through my tears, with my head bowed, I pleaded with my brother-in-law, "For God's sake, don't oppress me like this. This is an injustice to me. I considered you my brother, loved you like an elder brother. How can you do all this to me then? You've simply sold me off." My tears continuously streamed from my eyes, rolling down my cheeks. Meanwhile, the cruel-hearted brother-in-law standing opposite me sneered, looking at me with malice, and burst out laughing. He said, "What do you want? Do you expect me to keep you in this house, save money for your dowry, search for matches for you, and spend my hard-earned, lawful money day and night on your wedding? Absolutely not. I have neither that much wasted money nor that much spare time. I'm tolerating you in this house solely because of Aliyah. But now, if you want to see your sister's home settled, it's better you quietly do as I say. If you even try to tell your sister about this, no one will be worse than me. It won't take me 2 minutes to divorce your sister. Then both of you sisters can sit and mourn your fate, abandoned." Hearing these words from Kashif, my very being trembled. I could endure my own fate, but if Kashif divorced my elder sister Aliyah, she would be ruined. She had 2 daughters and was pregnant for the 3rd time. If I told her how her husband had treated her sister and what he was about to do, it could affect her health. Kashif had already threatened my sister, saying that if she didn't give birth to a son this time, she would be thrown out of the house. The poor woman was already living in fear of Kashif. Moreover, if telling her like this affected her health, especially when she was about to give Kashif the good news of a son, it would be terrible. I quietly swallowed all my tears, wiped my face, and stood up. With a trembling voice, I said, "I am ready to accept what you say." The next moment, Kashif stepped forward and placed his hand on my cheek. Patting my cheek, he said, "Yes, that's what I expected from you. By the way, you still have a chance if you want. I can save you." I had clearly sensed the malice in his tone. A shiver ran through my entire being. I looked at Kashif helplessly and immediately went into the other room and closed the door. Placing my head on my knees, I wept, thinking about where my fate would lead me next. After my parents passed away, I had been living with my elder sister. I was 13 when my sister brought me to her home. I had stepped onto the threshold of youth, but I still didn't know right from wrong. From the beginning, I had seen my brother-in-law treat my sister with very little kindness. He was constantly scolding and interrupting her. Ever since our parents died, he had been even more domineering, treating my sister as an orphan and helpless. As soon as I finished 10th grade, my brother-in-law made me quit school. He said there was no need to enroll in college. He couldn't afford it. He told me to stay home and do needlework, saying that's what girls do. I silently bowed my head and accepted his every word. If my father had been alive, I would have insisted on continuing in my studies, wanting to become something and escape this poverty. But it wasn't possible in front of him. Time continued to pass. One day I came out after bathing. It was winter, and I sat in the sun, drying my open hair with a towel. As I basked in the sun, I started combing my hair. My dupatta wasn't around my neck at that moment. Just then, Kashif got up from inside and came out. These days, my sister was in her 2nd month of pregnancy and mostly spent her time sleeping in her room. Anyway, I had taken good care of all the household responsibilities. I was engrossed in combing my hair when I felt the heat of someone's gaze on me. It felt as if someone was staring intently at me. I felt his eyes piercing through my very being. I quickly turned around and saw Kashif standing there looking at me with strange, covetous eyes. I instantly wrapped the dupatta around myself and asked, "Kashif, are you awake? Should I prepare breakfast for you?" The next moment he smiled. It was surprising. Never before had he smiled at me like that. What had happened today that he was smiling at me? He said, "Yes, make some strong tea," and stretching, he came and sat on the cot where I was sitting. Never before had he sat where I was sitting. He sat incredibly close to me, and as fate would have it, he placed his hand on my leg. I immediately jolted up, as if struck by an electric current. Perhaps a woman's sixth sense is incredibly sharp. She instantly knows when a relationship is changing its gaze. Something similar happened at that moment. I kept wondering how Kashif's tone and demeanor had changed. Before, he was always scolding. I went into the kitchen to prepare breakfast for him, and he followed me in. First, he started rattling the utensils. Then he came and stood beside me and placed his hand on my shoulder. I felt like a statue of ice. He brought his face close to mine and said, "You work so much, don't you? You've taken care of the entire house. Your sister just breaks the bed all day, doesn't she?" With trembling hands, I placed the paratha on the griddle and said, "No, Kashif, it's not like that. Thankfully, she's going through this condition. She's unwell. Otherwise, she does all the work herself." My lips were trembling. Kashif, after looking at me intently, said, "You know, you're not as bad as I treat you. You are truly very beautiful and delicate. How wonderful it would be if we became friends. Your sister wouldn't know anything. She just lies in her room resting all day. If you become friends with me, I'll take you out to roam around. If you ask, I'll even get you admitted to college. But for that, you'll have to adjust your behavior towards me." Kashif's tone surprised me even more. The signals my brain was sending me, my heart utterly failed to accept them. All of this was completely unexpected for me. I immediately backed away, saying, "What kind of tone are you using with me? What do you want to say?" As soon as my voice rose, the next moment he shouted and roared, "Why are you speaking to me in a loud voice? Aren't you ashamed? Don't you have any manners? Hey, I'm your brother-in-law. Speak with a lower voice or you'll be kicked out of this house in a snap." He had suddenly changed his tone like a shameless person. I was looking at his face in astonishment, wondering what my brother was saying, what his intention was. After that, whenever I went in front of Kashif, I would completely cover myself with my dupatta. I would try to finish all my chores before he came home, or make sure Ali Abaji was definitely with me. I was 17 years old at that time when one night there was a severe rain and storm. With even a little rain or storm, load shedding would start, and the entire house would be plunged into darkness. I had always been afraid of the dark. When sleep finally came, I moved from my sister's room to my own. There I lit a candle, closed the doors and windows, and lay down to sleep. Only a short while passed when I heard footsteps outside the door. However, due to the fierce storm and lightning, the sound was muffled and lost. But a little later, when I opened my eyes and tried to shift, the room was plunged into darkness. The candle had blown out. Before I could back away, I felt someone's hand near my neck. A scream escaped my throat. As soon as I tried to get up, the next moment, someone harshly squeezed my neck. I saw my death before my eyes. It felt as if I would die. Before I could say anything, I heard a voice close to my ear. "Shut up, you wretch! Dare to scream again, and what kind of theatrics are these?" Ahem. My hair stood on end. It was Kashif. What was he doing in my room at this hour of the night? And what was the purpose of touching me like this? All my doubts had now turned into reality. Just then, my sister, hearing my scream, immediately came to the room. She asked, "Nimra, what happened to you? Why are you screaming? Is everything all right?" Before she could finish, my brother-in-law had already lit the candle and silenced me with a scolding. He said, "Why did you get up and come here? I had already come to check on her. The poor girl was scared because it was dark, wasn't she?" My sister said, "All right, I'll sleep with you. You haven't changed at all, Nimra. You are so grown up, yet you are still afraid of the dark." My brother-in-law had already left the room by then, while I, terrified, hugged my sister and fell asleep. The scenes from the night kept replaying in my mind, and now, even in my sister's house, I felt my honor was unsafe. After that day, I started hiding from my brother-in-law completely. Seeing me so hesitant, my sister even asked, "You don't talk to Kashif like you used to. Has something happened, or has Kashif said something to you?" But I shook my head in denial, saying, "No, just take care of your health. Nothing like that has happened." We were still talking when my brother-in-law entered the house. He looked quite agitated. He sat down, clutching his head. When my sister asked, he said, "I took a loan of 20 lakh for my cloth shop, but neither has the cloth shop run well, nor has the money I invested come back. The landlord keeps demanding the money, and I am left empty-handed. I have nothing to give him to get rid of him." This was indeed a cause for concern, as Kashif had started his cloth shop 2 years ago. Initially, it did quite well, but as soon as profits started coming in, instead of saving or reinvesting them in more clothes, Kashif began spending the money on his indulgences. Every other day, he would bring home chicken or mutton, and daily he would host feasts for his friends. When my sister objected, he would scold her. And then everything collapsed. And today, he was empty-handed. My sister offered him the jewelry she had, but he scolded her back, saying, "What good are these flimsy earrings and wire-like ring of yours? They won't even make 1 lakh, and I'm talking about 20 lakhs. This evening, the landlord was coming to the house to talk to Kashif. Kashif brought groceries and said, "I need dinner ready by evening. Just make sure everything is prepared well and on time." I tied my dupatta around my waist and started preparing dinner in the kitchen. I had just turned away after putting the rice on simmer when there was a knock at the door. My brother-in-law rushed to the door. I stood hidden behind the kitchen door, watching. I don't know why, but I had heard a lot about these landlords in movies, dramas, and stories. The image etched in my mind was that he would be a young man of about 25 to 30, dressed in a white shalwar kameez, with a shawl draped over his shoulder, entering the house with a dignified air. He would become entranced after eating the food I prepared, and then the kind of scenes I often saw in films and stories would play out in my mind. But the very next moment, I felt ashamed of my own thoughts. What was I even thinking? Good heavens, I should be praying that Kashif's debt gets forgiven. I was still standing behind the door, watching with curiosity, when a landlord entered. Kashif was bowing before him as if he were laying down his eyelashes. This was an elder man, around 40 years old, incredibly handsome in appearance, with pride and arrogance radiating from his face. But he walked with a limp in one leg and used a crutch in the other hand. Seeing this, all my dreams had vanished into thin air. Disheartened, I prepared the raita. I could continuously hear the voices of the landlord and my brother-in-law from the guest room. A little later, my brother-in-law called out, "Bring the food!" I hesitantly told my brother-in-law, "How can I go in front of them? Please serve the food yourself." But the next moment, he scolded me, saying, "Why? Do you have mehndi on your feet that you can't pick it up and bring it? Quietly bring the food and set it in the guest room. I can't send the landlord away without feeding him." I was blushing crimson with shame. I hesitantly carried the food tray into the guest room. The moment I entered, all eyes turned to me. The landlord, with his arrogant gaze, stared at me intently as if he wanted to devour me with his eyes. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I quickly placed the food on the table and, without even looking up, rushed back to the kitchen. My heart was pounding and my hands and feet were trembling. I found an excuse to busy myself with some dishes, but my mind was stuck on the landlord's gaze. About half an hour later, the landlord got up to leave. Kashif accompanied him to the door. I was still in the kitchen pretending to be occupied. I heard their voices outside and then the sound of the door closing. Kashif returned to the kitchen, his face contorted with anger. He slammed his fist on the counter, making me jump. He looked at me with furious eyes and said, "Because of you, he made a ridiculous offer." I looked at him, bewildered. "What are you talking about, Kashif?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He scoffed. "That old man, that landlord, instead of forgiving the loan or giving me more time, he offered to forgive the entire 20 lakh debt if I hand you over to him." My blood ran cold. My head started spinning and the ground seemed to sway beneath my feet. What are you saying?" I stammered, unable to comprehend the horror of his words. Kashif laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You heard me right, you foolish girl. He said he wants you as his bride for a night. And if I agree, the entire debt is cleared. Can you believe it? He thinks you're worth 20 lakh. And you know what? I'm seriously considering it. What else can I do? I have nothing, Nimra. Nothing." I felt faint. This was worse than any nightmare. "Kashif, how can you even think such a thing?" I pleaded, tears welling up in my eyes. "I am your sister-in-law. My sister is your wife. How can you even consider selling me like this?" He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Don't you understand, Nimra? It's for Aliyah, for her home. If I don't pay back this debt, we'll lose everything. Her home will be destroyed. Think about her, Nimra. Think about her and her daughters." His words twisted in my gut. He was using Aaliyah as an excuse, as a weapon against me. I felt trapped, utterly helpless. My sister, innocent and unaware, was the unwitting pawn in this monstrous game. The weight of his words crushed me. I was just a girl, a vulnerable orphan, caught in a web of greed and depravity. What was I to do? Where could I go? My world, already fragile, shattered into a million pieces. The hatred in my heart had grown so immense that after the nikah, when it was time for my departure and Kashif tried to place his hand on my head, I publicly pushed his hand away. I said, "I'd rather die than ever set foot in your house again. You did not do right by me. I cannot even curse you because you are my sister's husband. If something happens to you, my sister and my nieces and nephews will suffer." With these words, I departed with the landlord. I had escaped one swamp, but the thought of what awaited me next was terrifying me to death. As the car stopped, it was in front of a grand mansion, and many young men stood there armed. Seeing such a magnificent mansion, my eyes widened in disbelief. The landlord, leaning on his crutch, walked ahead of me, and I followed behind. Just then I saw two women standing to one side. I thought they might be the landlord's sisters, but the way they looked at me made me nervous. One of them, a middle-aged woman with almost entirely white hair, clapped her hands and said, "Bravo, Jagirdar Umar Hayat Sahib. You've outdone yourself. Weren't two women enough to satisfy you that you brought a third? Have some shame. Your own daughter is older than her, and you've brought home such a young girl as a wife." Darkness engulfed my vision. These two women were my co-wives. My feet were rooted to the spot. The next moment, the landlord laughed and said, "I am a man. I have the right to keep 4. If I bring 10 instead of 4, what concern is it of yours? Get out of my sight with your old, clumsy body." If you had acted according to my wishes, perhaps I would never have paid attention to anyone else. Disappear. Today is my wedding night with my new bride. There's no need to needlessly spoil my mood. I stood nervously to one side. When the landlord led me to his room, I had thought he was perhaps impotent, that he walked with a limp and would only keep me as a maid in his house. But I had no idea that this person would truly consider me his wife and establish a physical relationship with me. I sat fearfully on the bed as the landlord walked towards me. The next moment, he took out a cigarette from a drawer, lit it, and began to take drags. I sat trembling, my veil drawn, when he blew cigarette smoke towards my face. My breath caught, and I started coughing. With a jerk, he lifted my veil, looking at my body with strange eyes, as if he had been hungry for centuries. Seeing tears in my eyes, he said, "Why are you crying for no reason? You're ruining my night by decorating your face with these tears. I forgave a full 20 lakh for you. Delicate blossoms like you bring coolness to my heart. Now quietly do as I say, or I can treat you very badly." I was looking at a spot, terrified, tears welling up in my eyes. Hesitantly, I said, "Please, I will spend my entire life as a maid in your house. I will work for free in your house until the 20 lakh loan is repaid. But don't ruin my life, for God's sake." My pleas did not soften this man, and after that, asserting his complete right over me, he began to exhibit his brutality. He gripped me, tearing my very soul, and I couldn't call for help even if I wanted to. All night, that man continued to victimize me with his brutality, and I, crying and sobbing, obeyed his every command. My body was broken. I lay on the bed with my eyes closed, thinking about how I was still alive after being subjected to such brutality at the hands of this man. Just then, he kicked me off the bed with his foot and said, "This is your place. Whenever I want you in my bed, I will call you. Otherwise, you, a girl of 2 cents, will sit here in this room like my pet." To the extent possible, that landlord was humiliating me, and I silently endured every humiliation. I wished I hadn't come to my brother-in-law's house, or that when my parents died, I too had been a victim of that accident and died with them. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, I was sleeping in the corner of the room. The older woman was there with me. Perhaps she had taken pity on my condition. She shook me awake by the shoulder and brought me to the bed. Seeing my state, she had understood what had happened to me in that room last night. She let out a deep breath and said, "Pray that this landlord dies a dog's death. He has ruined the lives of so many girls." First, I was the target of his torment. When I became rebellious and stood up to him, he married another. Now that his second wife is also losing his favor, he has brought you from somewhere. This man's hunger is never satisfied. He is hungry for women. She was comforting me, and considering my co-wife my friend, I hugged her and burst into tears. I told her everything about my past. After which she said, "Don't worry, I will try my best to ensure this person can't come near you again, no matter what I have to do." The landlord's first wife was named Rihanna, and she now seemed to be my protector in that house, while the landlord's second wife couldn't stand the sight of me. That evening, I was sitting in the courtyard staring at the plants when a gardener began to water them. He was a boy my age. He quietly watered the plants and kept glancing at me. Seeing me sitting so sadly, he walked up to me and said, "Madam, why are you so troubled?" I looked at him with my downcast eyes and said, "After coming to the landlord's estate, how can anyone be happy?" The gardener remained silent for a while. Then the next moment, he plucked a red rose and extended it towards me, saying, "Look at these flowers. Smell their fragrance. You will feel fresh. Have faith in God. What happened to you was wrong. You absolutely did not deserve a person like the landlord, but perhaps your fate will soon bring you peace." A sparkle was visible in the gardener's eyes, but that sparkle wasn't indicative of anything improper. After that, I would often come and sit in the courtyard. When I was doing chores around the house, that servant would see me working and start doing my share of the work himself. Even though I was married to this landlord and he would tear at me like an animal every night, a place began to form in my heart for this person. Love for him started to blossom in my heart, and on the other hand, feelings for me had also developed in Murad's heart. It was the scent of his emotions that reached me, and I had become crazy about him. One evening I was in my room when Murad brought groceries and placed them in the kitchen, then came into my room. The previous night I had fallen asleep from exhaustion while pressing the landlord's legs, and as punishment, the landlord had pressed a lit cigarette onto my cheek. Since morning I had been crying because of the burning sensation. I was in severe pain. Just then there was a knock at the door, and then Murad secretly entered the room. Seeing me sitting there, he asked, "What happened? Why didn't you come out of your room today?" I took a deep breath and then said, "How could I? Do you know what the landlord did to me?" Crying, I removed the sheet from my cheek. Seeing the wound on my cheek, he trembled. He said, "How dare that scoundrel? If I had the authority, I would have taken you away from here ages ago. That vile man, how dare he even touch you?" Tears streamed incessantly from my eyes. Murad stepped forward, and seeing the wound on my cheek, he let out a cold sigh. He had just placed his hand on my cheek when the landlord, tapping his cane, entered the room. As soon as he saw Murad and me together, he became enraged. "What are you doing in my room, you low-caste servant? What kind of romance are you having so close to my wife? By whose permission did you enter my room?" The limping landlord advanced, and the very next moment, he delivered a forceful slap across Murad's face. Murad fell to the floor. I nervously exclaimed, "It's not his fault. He just came here to give me water." I simply wanted to make an excuse to save Murad. I didn't want him, who was suffering daily, to have to endure this poor Murad's suffering too. If he lost his job because of me, how would he support his family? But the very next instant, the landlord slapped me hard on the very cheek that bore the cigarette burn. He said, "Oh, so in my absence, you'll invite house servants into your room now? You've become so audacious that you'll call strangers into my room and show them your injured cheeks." My complexion had turned utterly pale with fear, but perhaps this was the right moment. Before he could attack us further, Murad grabbed a vase and forcefully smashed it on the landlord's head. A gush of blood spurted from the landlord's head. I nervously recoiled several steps. What would happen if someone came in from outside at that moment? I looked at Murad, terrified. The landlord's head had split open. The entire floor began to fill with blood. I asked Murad, "What have you done? You've killed him. Don't you know people will take our lives? He was the landlord of this village." But Murad said, "Neither of us will let anyone know. I will take you from here." I was so overwhelmed with panic that I couldn't think what to do. This cruel man had made so many people's lives miserable, trampled on the honors of so many girls. In a few days, when he would get bored of me, he would have done the same to me. Before anyone could enter the room, we both lifted the landlord and laid him on the bed. We cleaned all the blood from the floor and covered him with a sheet. Then both of us slipped out. Before anyone could suspect us, we both left the house. Murad had come here for a job from another village. After traveling for 3 hours, we reached his village. I kept asking Murad repeatedly, "What will happen if anyone finds out that we both killed the landlord?" I was trembling with fear, tears streaming from my eyes. But Murad insisted he would handle everything. He claimed no one could harm us. Besides, the landlord's wives were probably fed up with him themselves and wouldn't even file a police complaint. No one would be able to reach us this far away. I felt a bit reassured. Murad then brought me to his home, where his mother and 2 sisters lived, along with an unmarried elder brother. When they saw me with Murad, chaos erupted in the house. Murad's mother seemed quite emotional, saying, "I sent you there to work, to earn some money, but instead, you've brought a girl you ran away with. Tell me, who is she?" Murad's mother was pulling her hair and beating her chest, crying as if her son hadn't brought a girl but a corpse home. Murad tried to explain to his mother, while his elder brother kept staring at me. Murad clearly stated, "I have saved this girl from a great calamity. She will stay in this house, and as soon as her iddat is complete, I will marry her." Initially, they might have agreed to his marriage, but when they learned that iddat needed to be completed, his mother almost fainted. Murad's elder brother asked him, "Who is this girl you've brought? Did she get a divorce for your sake?" Murad nervously replied, "No, her husband has passed away." Murad's mother then opened a barrage of questions, saying, "Oh, so she abandoned her husband's funeral and ran away with you like this? I suspect some connivance between the two of you. Something has happened that you're hiding from me." When Murad's family repeatedly pressed him for answers, I broke my silence. Weeping, I told them the entire truth, while Murad kept trying to quiet me. Upon learning the whole story, they all sat down, holding their heads. They said, "We don't even interact with the big people in our area. The friendships and enmities of these big people are both very dangerous. And you've gone and killed the landlord of another village. This girl cannot stay in this house now. Leave her where you brought her from." I was terrified by how Murad's family was pressuring him. If he abandoned me, where would I go? I stood to one side and began to cry. But Murad stood by me. He said, "I have brought this girl here of my own free will, and I will make her my wife. She has suffered a lot of injustice already. She is an orphan. Now keep this in mind. If you try to do anything wrong or unjust to this girl, God will show you no mercy at all." He then took me to a separate room where his sisters lived. He said, "From today onwards, you will stay here." I sat there, timid and scared, when Murad's 2 sisters approached me. At first, the 3 of us just stared at each other. Then the next moment, they started asking me my name and about my parents. In a short time, we had become good friends. Because I was in iddat, I mostly stayed in the room. The 2 girls would chat with me when their mother wasn't around. Knowing my past, they genuinely felt deep pity for me. However, as soon as Murad's mother entered the room, they would immediately distance themselves from me. As time progressed, all my needs were being met while living in that house. When Murad's elder brother and he weren't home, I would also help Murad's 2 sisters with household chores. The news had in fact reached them that the landlord of the other village had been killed. Gradually, this fear also began to diminish from my heart. However, the fear of having killed a living, breathing human being remained within me. Thinking this, I let out a deep sigh and freed myself from that burden, reasoning that I had killed him for my self-preservation. Otherwise, that person would have surely killed me with his own hands. Slowly, peace began to settle into my life. As soon as my iddat was complete, Murad's mother came to me again and said, "My son truly loves you. I had thought I would find a beautiful unmarried girl for him, but it was his fate to fall in love with a girl who was already married. Nevertheless, I am arranging your nikah this Friday." She sat beside me, telling me about all the traditions and customs of her house, and I quietly listened to her every word, nodding in agreement. I felt as if happiness had returned to my life, that everything would be all right, and I would live happily in this house with all of them. but I had no idea that once again, my happiness was about to be eclipsed. It was the day of the Nikah. I was dressed as a bride and sitting there. The house was packed with guests. Murad and I were both sitting in front of everyone. As the Maulvi Sahib solemnized the marriage, I smiled and gave myself to Murad. The felicitations had just begun when police officers burst through the door. Everyone's eyes widened in shock at the sight of the police. Upon entering, an officer immediately asked, "Who is Murad?" As soon as their eyes fell on us, they swiftly apprehended Murad. Lady constables also seized me, saying, "Did you two think you could kill someone and escape, and the law wouldn't reach you? The long arm of the law won't let you go easily. We'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." What did you think, disappearing from the scene for so many months? In my panic, I had grabbed Murad's hand, but then a sturdy lady constable slapped me across the face. "Aren't you ashamed?" she sneered after hitting me. "Killing your husband and then marrying your lover here? Girls like you should be made an example of." The onlookers immediately started whispering. It was now out in the open that Murad and I had killed someone and come here, and that I was not an unmarried girl, but already married. Everyone started spitting in disgust. As they began to drag me away, Murad's mother fainted. She had suffered a heart attack. At that moment, I felt utterly helpless. Weeping, I started thinking that perhaps I was cursed and my bad luck was ruining Murad's fate too. In that instant, I decided and told the police officers, "Murad is innocent. He didn't do anything. I killed the landlord. Please release Murad." Murad, who was standing near his unconscious mother at that moment, was left behind when I took the blame. The police officer put me in the police van and the vehicle started moving towards the police station. They could interrogate Murad later. I was in jail when a handsome 35-year-old SHO arrived. He had been assigned the investigation of the landlord's murder. When SHO Arbaz Khan saw me, the surprise and disbelief on his face forced me to become nervous. I was sitting in a corner, weeping uncontrollably, when the SHO came to me and said, "You look so innocent, but what a shameless woman you are, killing your own husband for a servant. Do you even know you could be hanged or get a life sentence? What did you think, that if you ran away, no one would reach you?" I sat silently, watching as the SHO continuously lectured me, trying his best to provoke me. Finally, I let out a deep breath and burst out. I began telling him how that landlord and my brother-in-law had conspired to sell me. What else was I to do, I asked, if I didn't save myself from that monstrous landlord? As soon as I spoke everything, a smile spread across the officer's face. He said, "This is exactly what I wanted to hear, girl. Looking at you, I had already guessed that something must have happened to you, otherwise, you wouldn't have taken such an extreme step. Anyway, don't worry, I have received many cases concerning that landlord, but our seniors have also been strict with us. That landlord was a very influential man. Stay here for a few days and then I will get you released." I began to thank him. At least he had understood my compulsion. Murad had also arrived at the police station. The SHO had spoken to him. He didn't leave until I was released. In just a few days, the SHO closed the case. The villagers were also rid of that landlord. However, Kashif was kept in jail for 2 months to set him straight. There was a lot of notoriety in the entire neighborhood. Once again, my mother-in-law's attitude towards me became harsh, but slowly, everything got better. Happiness returned to my life, and I began living a peaceful life with Murad.